Chief, you ever gonna get around to making... Ah, great, he watched it.
What do we do?
Get me a gallon of liquid IQ and a funnel.
Man, I had heard all of the stories about how far Cartoon Network had fallen, but good freaking night! I never imagined anything as mind-numbing and horrific as Johnny Test! Cartoon Network has become infamous for having the biggest fall from grace of any network since MTV, as it went from being the standard bearer of the animation renaissance in the 90s to being the epitome of the medium being ruined by boneheaded executive opinions. Most people want to place the blame at Stuart Snyder, who took control of the network in 2007, and it was since then that the network's change in tone really began glaring through. And yes, Johnny Test began airing on Cartoon Network a year after Snyder took the reins. However, the show had been produced for Time Warner since 2005, originally airing on Kids WB, and it was a year before that when Toonami head Mike Lazo uttered the infamous quote about shows for adults not needing good animation, or any at all, while kids shows only needed to be bright, colorful, and loud. So yeah, either way, it was clear Warner was already driving back toward the animation age ghetto before Snyder took the wheel. And this creation of Scott Fellows is Exhibit A toward that claim. This is the show that drove me to remove my moratorium on reviewing TV shows aimed primarily at kids of recent years. Think about that. I've held back from talking about SpongeBob SquarePants, MLP Friendship is Magic, and even Teen Titans Go! Shows that would probably give me 100 times as many views if I dared talk about them. So what is it about this show that caused me to say, screw my standards, I have to review this? I think perhaps the biggest reason is that this show had the potential to be good when you really take a look at its core concept. A lot of people say Johnny Test is just an inverted ripoff of Dexter's Laboratory, and there is a lot of evidence to that claim. But I actually can't help but compare it to another show as well. This could have been Cartoon Network's equivalent to Phineas and Ferb. In fact, the show premiered 2 years before PNF, so Scott Fellows could have beaten Povenmire and Swampy to the punch. I have frequently stated that Phineas and Ferb is one of the best cartoon shows made in a long time, because it completely ran with a ludicrous concept and created characters that are almost all likable or at least enjoyable. This show? Well, you could say they tried at the former of those two areas, but bombed harder than the US version of Coupling on the latter. So instead of the Warner equivalent of P&F, we instead got the animated version of Final Fantasy X. Yeah, think about it. This thing has somehow received massive popularity despite representing everything that's wrong with the medium. It's got stupid plot elements that make no sense, some of the most unlikable dill-hole characters in existence, and you want to know the capper? Johnny Test himself is voiced by the same guy who voiced Titus! If that wasn't enough to make you switch off this video and go see what Decker Shadow's doing, prepare yourself for a mind-numbing tripe of the lowest regard as we finally take a look at Johnny Test. The title character of Johnny Test is a hyperactive 11-year-old kid who frequently allows himself to be the guinea pig for the scientific experiments of his older super genius twin sisters Susan and Mary. They live in a place called Pork Belly, which is also home to secret government agents and a military base. Oh, and his pet dog is anthropomorphic, supposedly due to his sisters having experimented on him.
Consider this pool of mud my way of saying, you can't fly! Kids, don't try this at home. Boy, no fly.
They basically combine Dexter's Lab with Calvin and Hobbes and create a scenario that could have rivaled what Phineas and Ferb would become. How do you screw that up so horribly? Well, for one thing, the show suffers from the same speed everything up mentality on animation and dialogue that Mr. Pickles had, with the added annoyance that it is really freaking loud.
10 minutes later. 10 more minutes later.
How are you doing? I'm getting used to it!
I mean, geez, even I take a break on the high volume more often than this show. But don't expect too much of that in this review because I don't think my rage will allow it. But that's only the beginning. I said the one thing that to me makes Phineas and Ferb the most amazing show in years is that they somehow managed to make almost every single character, even Candace and especially Doofenshmirtz, likable in some way. Johnny Test is the exact opposite. You cannot find one character in this entire show to root for. Everyone is a jerk. Everyone! Let's take our main character. Take every single annoying, hyperactive, bratty preteen kid seen in a bajillion different forms of media and then give him gear that MI6 couldn't build. If Faith from Buffy had become a full-on vampire, she wouldn't have been this big a threat to humanity. And you know what? Johnny isn't even close to being the worst character in this show! No, that would be the twins, and not even because of the mad scientist horrors they perform on their own brother. That's tame compared to what they do to try and satisfy their extremely unhealthy obsession with their next-door neighbor, Gil Nextdoor.
What kind of stupid name is that?
I mean, there's an innocent schoolgirl crush, and then there's this.
Bubble Love Gum. It will mutate Gil's attraction cells and make him fall in love with us. Because Gil loves animals, we can change ourselves into animals and he will love us in animal forms.
I am so many levels of not comfortable right now!
Baby twins! Your new baby sisters. That's why I'm here. I just started a babysitting service. Hey, I think they like me.
Oh, you have no idea.
Still not clean. Still not clean. They do this kind of stuff throughout the whole series. And you know what? I'm going there. If this was reversed and we were seeing two boy nerds doing all this to try and score the hot chick next door, Dr. Nerd Love and Tumblr would go completely ape. But no, because it's girls lusting after a boy, it's funny and we're supposed to root for them. That's not to say anyone else in the show is tolerable even by comparison. Oh no, truly everyone here gets a chance to make you want to see them erased with a gallon of Judge Doom's dip, like the kids' parents. Now, confession time. I never really understood just why Dexter always needed to keep his lab a secret from his parents, but here they find a way to make that plot element worse. Here, the parents do know about the lab, because it's apparently funnier for their OCD stay-at-home dad to have the same problem with science that Darren Stevens had with witchcraft. He's always forbidding the twins from performing their crime against nature experiments, which naturally they disobey him on all the time. Okay, I guess it's reasonable that he wouldn't be in favor of them always turning their brother into fish or werewolves and probably putting him at risk of getting 100 different forms of cancer that haven't even been discovered yet, but that doesn't mean he isn't at times hypocritical about his ways. If there's one character that comes off as almost tolerable at times, it's the dog Dookie. And that's because every so often, he's the only one who seems to realize just how immoral just about everyone is. These facial expressions he makes, it's like he knows he's in a bad cartoon that's beneath his talents, like the superstar athlete that's on the worst team in the league. Will they please trade me to Disney so I can get on Gravity Falls? Oh yeah, and despite everything that goes on in Pork Belly, which includes getting attacked by monsters and aliens about as often as Angel Grove, Johnny still feels that Dookie's abilities need to be kept a secret, meaning disguising him in ways that Lois Lane should be able to see through.
He's a kid with a rare hair disorder, not a dog.
But not even Dookie can avoid having his own moments of jerkassery. It's like every single character had it written into their contracts must be a douchebag in at least 10 episodes. Even the recurring side characters are not just annoying as all get out, they're often inconsistent in their personalities, like the girl Sissy that Johnny goes to school with. In one episode, she's pounding Johnny into the floor at dodgeball. In another, she's making Johnny play with Barbies and telling him they can't be tough because it's not ladylike. Character consistency, what God? The General, who I don't think is ever given a name, is your standard patent-level insane military guy, just with nothing funny about him whatsoever.
This new self-piloting, plane, it's a plane, is amazing!
And then there's Agents Black and White. Ha!
You've been ordered to spy on us?
Don't think of it as spying. Think of it as secretly watching you to make sure you're not up to any dangerous experiments.
These two would get pantsed by Inspector Clouseau, Maxwell Smart, Inspector Gadget, and Frank Drabin.
Ha! It is I, Bling Bling Boy, the world's youngest and evilest mind.
Oh, good night, I forgot all about this little turd. Yes, this is Eugene, who thinks he's a supervillain called Bling Bling Boy and constantly threatens to take over the world unless Susan goes out with him.
I will destroy Pork Belly with my don't you cut.
Well, I give the show credit for being equal opportunity in the creepy stalker department. And no, I don't think it's ever stated why he prefers Susan over Mary, especially since Susan is supposedly the nuttier of the two. I guess you could say it's the whole guys love the crazy chicks trope, but this show would never stoop that low, would they? And sadly, Eugene is only one of the first bad guys created for this show in what will become the worst rogues gallery assembled this side of Stripperella. Like Brain Freezer, who is basically what you'd get if you cross Snow Miser with Chris Chan.
It is you who will chill out for good!
Hey, she was just asking you to be cool.
Now, you be cool forever!
Yes, this episode has more ice puns than Schumacher's Batman and Robin. Moving on!
You can't run from my cat army. Because soon you will all be my cat warriors! As soon as I figure out how.
The worst part is that ripping off a bad kids movie from the 90s in order to parody Dr. Claw is about as creative as this show gets. But don't worry, the city is safe from all these bad guys because Johnny can have himself turned into a superhero called Johnny X. That, yes, is one of the many recurring plot devices that Fellows and the other writers keep coming back to. And no, I don't have a problem with cartoons using recurring story elements. when they don't suck! Unlike here, where how the powers Johnny has the twins give him includes...
Lower posterior energy bursts?
Yes, it's exactly what you think it is.
Flaming power poots.
You think you're funny, but you're not, Scott Fellows. I'm just scratching the surface here. This review would take weeks if I went through every single head-bashing thing they did in the 6 seasons this show has aired over nearly 10 years. It's like they wanted to get more and more annoying with each passing season, and they succeeded. It doesn't help that the show is constantly reminding me of what I could be watching instead. Yes, Roger Myers Jr. said ripping off is the backbone of animation, and rehashing the shrinking plot or Freaky Friday story is one thing, but they also take plot elements from Pokemon, Wacky Races, UHF, Snoopy Come Home, Here Comes Garfield. I mean, this level of ripping off with no quality is irate gamer level stupid. And the frustration always seems to come down to just how annoying everyone is. So, we're apparently supposed to not like the family's stuck-up dad for forbidding the girls from changing the world with their experiments, only the girls frequently use those experiments not just on Johnny, but against him just for their own cruel fun, only Johnny is far from the most likable because he often steals their gadgets anyway to cause his own trouble and be a menace to others, which Dookie tries to protest, only he goes along with it every time in exchange for a steak. But that doesn't mean his nemesis Eugene is worth cheering for because he's a creepy stalker to Susan, except we can't really feel sorry for her in that regard because she and Mary are creepy stalkers of Gil and will flat out rape his mind to get him to like them. Is Porkbelly in the same state as Brickleberry and everyone there is suffering from toxic brain poisoning that makes them all act like dick hats? By the way, I know I'm gonna get comments up the wazoo if I don't bring up the one thing about this show that seemed to frustrate everyone. The whip sound. Yeah, the creators used this whip cracking sound about a bajillion times in every episode for just about every single sound effect. But to be perfectly honest, I actually didn't notice it that much in any of the episodes I watched. At least not for it to be irritating. I may get ridiculed for admitting that, but the only explanation I can give is that the whip sound got drowned out with how utterly god-awful everything else in the show is. It was a little difficult for me to check for an annoying sound effect while seeing stuff like the twins turning themselves into rabbits to get Gil to cuddle them and Johnny being able to fart fire! Amazingly, I have talked to people that have suggested that the first 3 seasons of this show were somewhat tolerable. My response to that? Yeah, props to you guys for being more tolerant than me. That 3rd season did give the tiniest bit of hope that the series might end there, as it concluded with this 2-parter full half-hour episode that was pretty much a Justice League Spaceballs crossover parody. But the one thing you can always count on Johnny Test to do is take an incredibly awesome concept and flush it down the crapper!
Together we can form one giant super mutant power and destroy the Armada. You know, I always thought it would end with a freezing blast, not a fiery one. Mega Power Poot ready!
And even sadder is that it wasn't the end. The show lasted for 3 more seasons. Pretty much 3 seasons of the same thing. There supposedly is a 7th season, bringing the show's run to 130 episodes, but as best as I can see, not only is it going to be the last, but it's only running in Canada where the show is produced. Meanwhile, the show has appeared to have vanished from Cartoon Network's lineup. Miracles can happen, I guess, because this show insults the intelligence of people who make a living insulting people's intelligence! Millions of kids should be outraged for TV producers thinking this is what they find entertaining. Unlikable characters, unfunny jokes, toilet humor, animation and dialogue that need riddling. If annoying TV cliche bingo was a game, you would win
easily with this show.
And perhaps most discouraging of all, this show was actually produced by DHX Media, the group that now owns almost all of the shows produced by Deke. If the reason they stopped uploading classic shows to their YouTube page was so they could devote time to producing this, I'm gonna go Louisville Slugger on something! I guess Cartoon Network has shown signs in more recent years of getting better, since they do seem to be placing more emphasis on the shows of theirs that have received praise. But having the memory of this thing and their stupid attempts to push live action programming on the network have definitely left scars that are going to take a long time for viewers to completely forget about. I don't know how many viewers I have with kids, but to those out there I implore you, get them hooked on the good stuff. Ninja Turtles, Garfield and Friends, DuckTales, anything Warner made in the early 90s like Tiny Toons and Animaniacs. They deserve better than Johnny Test. This has been a public service message from Rowdy C, because friends don't let friends raise their kids on TV trash.